Okay, hello everybody. This is probably the last class where we're gonna cover a specific topic, and then next week we're gonna wrap up and take some general lessons about the whole issue of using technology when advocating human rights, and especially focusing on campaigns that we've been developing a campaign since the beginning of the course, and we are going to have a campaign plan next week ready, and that means that we're gonna look at the campaign plan. So as you see, we spend a lot of time talking about planning, talking about strategy, talking about organizing, managing campaigns, talking about developing messages, talking about using different tools for disseminating those messages, also as part of the campaign. Last week we talked about managing organizers and how can we turn this campaign into a much wider effort. But things usually don't go as planned, and so before we go into the last session and we wrap up everything we need on campaigning, this session we will spend some time looking at unforeseen events, both opportunities and threats that can actually change the course or the dynamic of the struggle, and that can actually either help or undermine the advocacy effort. So every campaign has a plan, but as one of the, I think it was Dwight Eisenhower, American general, who said planning is everything but plan is nothing, because he was referring to unforeseen events that can actually change everything that we planned and make these plans obsolete. I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say that we have to ditch all the planning that we did because of the unforeseen events, but I think that we should understand the dynamic of unforeseen events, because that can actually help us accommodate and that can help us modify our plans as we go. So in order to do that, we're going to focus on one particular, type of event, and it is important for human rights advocacy efforts, because in this particular event there are tremendous implications on human rights issues, especially the violations of human rights. So we're going to talk about backfire. When we talk about backfire, and before we go into talking about backfire, let's spend a few times talking about repression, because backfire is connected to repression, and we're gonna define backfire as we go. So if you're not clear with the term yet, we're gonna go slowly into defining it. So we're gonna spend a few minutes talking about repression. This particular photo was taken on Tiananmen Square back in 1989, and this is a Chinese student who is facing the tanks of the Chinese military, who went in and suppressed the protests that were taking place on Tiananmen Square. So this is, for instance, a photo that you cannot Google if you're inside China. That is even to this day a taboo. So this particular photo and many other photos are we can say became global symbols of repression. So before defining backslide, we should maybe ask ourselves several questions about repression. First question, could be, what is the goal of repression? Then we should ask ourselves about the different features of these repressions, the limitations, costs, effects, consequences, etc., etc. But let's go step by step. Does anybody have an idea, or does anybody have some thoughts on what is the goal of repression? And you can raise your hand and or you can type it in the chat box. One of the answers that was typed in the chat box is stop opposition against the regime. So yeah, this is suppression of opposition activities is the goal. So this is most direct. How shall I say? It is connected also to the direct effect of the repression. That people who are protesting or people who are involved in opposition activity, they are actually put in jail and they cannot do it anymore. The repression is enforced by totalitarian anti-human rights regimes. That is true, because repression is a coercive mechanism that actually doesn't allow political problems to be resolved by political means, but they are actually preventing that from happening. So I would add to the direct effect of putting people in jail who are involved in the opposition activity. Is there an indirect effect? Do you have an idea? Silencing is also a direct effect, as somebody said. Silencing people who are involved in opposition activities. An indirect effect would be raising fear and actually preventing people from joining these activities because they see what could happen to them if they get involved. What about limitations and costs? What are the limitations to repression? These limitations actually have a lot to deal with direct and indirect effects, because the limitation is loss of faith in international community. That is one limitation for use of repression. That is true. But looking at the cost, if the repression increases brutality and causes massacres or major human rights violations, that is a big social cost as well, not just cost to the regime. And I would add one more, and that is that the more people are facing the direct effects of the repression, actually the repression itself becomes more costly, because more people need to be put in jail, more people put under surveillance. So ideally, for the regime, indirect effects should work. Actually, people, one particular one particular incident should actually cause so much fear that everybody else stops or is prevented from doing anything. So that would be a low cost for the regime. But the problem for the regime is when the opposite occurs, when a lot of people are involved and a lot of people have to be directly repressed, so silenced. Okay, another limitation, people's tolerance. They can't keep doing repression, they just need to scare people not to keep doing it. Yeah, indeed, that is what I was referring to. And then another thing is that the people who are involved in repressive activities, to organize them, to use them, and to manipulate with them also requires a lot of effort and a lot of resources. They have to be paid, they have to be constantly brainwashed and kept under orders, and etc., etc. So repression itself is not an easy thing for the regime. So what would be so we talked a lot about intended consequences of repression, but what could be an unintended consequence, something that the regime didn't foresee, but it happened as a result of repression? Any ideas? Backfire, indeed. So one of the answers here was backfire. Unintended consequence is actually when the repression backfires. So what are we going to talk about here is we're going to talk about when things get out of control and when we have unintended event, which is backfire. So what is backfire? Can somebody give us like a short definition of a backfiring incident, an incident that backfired? Yes, the backfire has opposite results. It's actually not just that it's unintended, but it actually has the opposite results from what the real intent was. So this particular cartoon is a cartoon of late Khaled Said from Alexandria holding President of Egypt Mubarak as a little, how shall I say, little toy in his fingers. And what happened to Khaled Said in a year, a little bit less than a year, in the year before the Egyptian uprising, actually is a very good example of backfire. This was a young boy. He was very young, living in Alexandria, and he was interested in computers, and he was hanging out in a cyber cafe in Alexandria when the police officers came in, and everybody thought that they were just gonna arrest him and interrogate him, but they actually took him in. They beat him up so badly, and he was killed. He was brutally tortured and killed. And what happened, unlike many other situations which were happening in Egypt, this particular incident, this particular murder, backfired. First, it backfired because it was so brutal, and because the pictures of Khaled Said leaked, and people could see that on the internet. But it also backfired because of the enormous effort by the community, Egyptian blogger community, and online activists who were most notable. Facebook group was made by Wael Gonim, who was the Google guy in Egypt, Google manager, who made a Facebook page called We Are All Khaled Said. But others were involved in that, and this particular incident was given so much visibility and so much produced so much anger and outrage that actually Latouf, the Brazilian cartoonist, actually put this as one of the important how shall I say, forces that drove Mubarak out of office. And indeed, if you look at the analysis of the Egyptian uprising, actually repression that backfired was often cited as one of the reasons why Mubarak's regime fell. So the intended consequence of the repression that Mubarak used was to silence the opposition or to raise fear, but what happened was actually that this repression backfired, and instead of producing fear, it produced anger and outrage of the people. It had a totally undesired effect, as somebody said here. So in the readings that I gave you, there is and you have it in the Tavana library, there is a lot of stuff on backfire, but I'm just gonna take out one little definition by Brian Martin, who actually defined backfire first. And he said that an attack can be said to backfire when it creates more support for or attention to whatever is attacked. Any injustice or norm violation can backfire on the perpetrator. So it is actually creating support, more support or attention to the target of the attack. In this case, the Egyptian bloggers, Egyptian activist community, online activist community was actually gaining more support because of the repression, because the murder of Khaled Said actually backfired. There are other, how shall I say, names for this. Lester Kurtz and Lee Smithy, they call this repression paradox, but it's practically, we're talking, when they say repression paradox, they want to say the same thing. They want to say the paradox is that you want to silence people, but by using repression you may actually cause moral outrage and then actually have the opposite effect, not silencing them, but actually making them more angry and more ready to put up a fight. Okay, so in order to, defining backfire was rather easy, and I don't think that actually is very interesting either. But I think what is interesting here is the dynamic of backfire, why it happens, how it happens, what is going on here, why some incidents backfire and some incidents don't backfire. Because not all repression backfires. Actually, only a small percentage of repression does backfire. So in order to go more deeply into that and to try to understand why this is happening and when is this happening, we're gonna do a little simulation. And so my little simulation actually was intended to be, how to call it? It has nothing to do with the real world. It's a totally made up situation, and I wanted you to take the roles here, odd numbers, meaning THR 131, 181, 191, and 195, and also the 43 and 53 are going to be odds, which means they are odds are playing basketball in the local basketball court, and their goal is to preserve the court as it is. So this is the situation that I'm putting you in. And then 208 and 58, they're gonna be actually evens. This is the second group, and their goal is to demolish the basketball court on behalf of the city government and build something else. So these are your goals. The situation is stated as it is. The odds are basketball players who want to preserve the basketball court, and evens are people working for the city government who want to demolish the basketball course. Does this sound clear? Can I go into the next slide? I guess it is. Okay, so what is happening? odds started protests against the demolition, and they're protesting against construction of whatever the Evans are trying to construct. So what happened? There was an incident when Evans were at the court. They were using instruments to survey the court and trying to see what can to be built, and one of the Evans actually hit and injured one of the odds. So this is the unintended, how shall I say, unplanned incident that was not part of the campaign or protest or anything. So this is the situation here. So the odds were protesting, and one of the Evans who was there actually hit one of the odds and injured him badly. So nobody planned for this, and now we're in crisis management. We're trying to see how are we going to solve this situation. Each group is actually trying to solve their problem. So the question now is, what is the first move for the odds, for the basketball players who were protesting the demolition after one of their people was hit or beaten by the Evans? What is the first move? Okay, so we're having the first file a lawsuit for assault, document and send online. Okay, so that would be to publicize, maybe. This is the first thing, is to publicize, broadcast, publicize. Send online. Okay, to gain public awareness. And what about the Evans? What is the first move that they're trying to do? And when immediately as this was happening, one guy hit the other guy. Negotiate, not publicize. Actually, yes. Okay, so what they're trying to do is they're trying to, okay, so if made public, excuse immediately, to encourage other odds to prevent violation and to show they're sorry about what happened, to prevent backfire at that point, I think. Okay, so yeah, this is already the next step. So in the first immediate step, of course, the odds are trying to publicize the incident, and the Evans are trying to cover it up. Okay, so this is the first step, and it went out, so people know about it now. So people know that there was a fight, and they still don't know who hit whom or what happened and why was this person hit, or but they know that there was a fight. So what is the next move for the odds? Public demonstration against the violence, so rally support. Explanation would be helpful. Okay, so explain what happened. That is also because people know that there was an incident, but they still don't know what is happening. And what with the Evans? What they are when the information came out? What are they trying to do? Again, their goal is to continue with the demolition. So this is an incident that they didn't need. This is not something that they wanted to do. So what is their next move when the situation got out of control, and then the incident was made public? Okay, so they describe the mistake is not intended. Okay, so they are interpreting the incident. So they're telling their own story. So this is not really what happened. It was a mistake or whatever. We had another option over earlier to apologize immediately, and that is also a possibility. They're trying to kind of bury it there. So that's also okay. So we are having another round. So now the things are already kind of clear, and it is known that one of the evens actually hit one of the odds, and people are aware of this. So now, what is the next step for the odds? What they could do now that it is actually clear that the people who were the basketball players were actually under the attack. Okay. So negotiate with when they have an. This is a very good. This is a very good way to think strategically. So one of the comments here is that now that the odds have the upper hand, they should use this to start the negotiations and recruit new members. Okay, so use actually public outrage to recruit new members. Okay, and what do the other side, what do the evens do? What can they do at this point? It is already known that it was one of them who hit the other group. Give a little bit. Okay, so immediately destruct the building and not let the odds use the public support. Okay, so this is show that the hitted man was part of a story too. I didn't get that quite, but what they could do, another thing they could do is actually they could devalue the victim of the assault. They could say that he was, I don't know, drunk or drugged, or that he was actually being violent or something like that. Because then, if you put it under that, then he's not seen as a pure victim. So that would be another thing they could do. Okay, so now you know the next, and we can go on forever like this, but we're gonna do one more maybe. So now it is already clear that there was an incident and that one of the evens hit one of the odds, and now it seems that one of the evens actually, odds can say one person is not a representative of the whole act. Yeah. Okay. So it is already clear that one of the odds that was hit was actually totally innocent, and that he wasn't drugged, and it was complete, how shall I say, it was an incident that was produced by the events completely. So what would be and you already pointed to that direction, what would be the next step for the odds? They already started recruiting public outrage, or actually using public outrage to recruit new members. So what would be the final, how shall I say, thing that the odds would do to use this incident for their cause? Any ideas? Ask for unity against even. Okay, petition against the destruction of the building. So, indeed, so what they're doing in the end is they're tying this incident to the larger cause that they're fighting. So this is the where the campaign that they're doing to prevent the construction of the basketball court actually comes back in. So the whole idea of unintended events and things that are happening without plan is actually how to use them to go back to what we already planned and to bring us to our goal again. Because we are not going to have if we have too many distractions, we are going to be led astray. So every event that is unforeseen can be better used if it ties back to it goes back to the campaign that was originally planned. So another thing is have neighborhood sign and collect signatures, and which is actually collect or mobilize people around the original goal, which is to prevent the construction. So you can use actually the incident to advance the original goal. So now to kind of sum up, the movement strategy in this case, these were the odds, these were the people who are fighting against repression, the basketball players. Their strategy in this case was to reveal the incident, so they went public, they wanted to publicize it, to redeem the victim, to say that the victim of the incident is indeed a victim and he was innocent in the fight, to reframe the whole incident, to put it under the how shall I say, under to put it in the context of the demolition, to redirect the people who they mobilize and recruit, and to use them to resist the demolition of the building. So revealing the incident, redeeming the victim, reframing the incident to put it in the context of a larger struggle, redirecting public outrage to the goal, and then resisting the repression. For the regime, in this case for Evans, the first thing was to cover up, then to devalue. It wasn't really a big incident, it was nothing. To devalue the victim, maybe he was drunk, maybe he started it, maybe he was too aggressive. To reinterpret what is going on, that also is tied to the devaluation. It's not really what happened. Then in many cases to use official channels. In our case, the example of that, we're gonna apologize and then we're gonna continue with whatever we were doing. So official channels in many cases would be, to ask for an official investigation, which is going to just buy time. The strategy of the other side is, as I said, to cover up the incident, to devalue the victim, to reinterpret what was going on, to try to use official channels, either official investigation, or in this case it was the apology, and in certain cases to intimidate the other side, to kind of try to continue with the repression by intimidating the victim further. So, as you can see, the main strength of the movement is actually to redirect the anger into resistance to the repression. And this is what happened in Egypt with Khaled Said, and this is what happened in Serbia in 2000. And I'm gonna spend few minutes talking about this particular incident, because I think it's very, very important. although it wasn't given too much credit in the official history of the fall of Milosevic. Mainly because it happened many months before Milosevic actually fell. So Milosevic fell in October of 2000, and this particular incident happened in early May of 2000. But as we realized later when everything was over, it had a significant impact on our struggle. So as you can see in the first photo on the left, on this particular slide, you can see Milosevic in the back and this blonde guy in the front. That blonde guy is Milosevic's son. And what is interesting about Milosevic's son is that he was a criminal, and he's still, I guess. Milosevic's son, who was a local bully and a criminal in the city of Požarevac, which is Milosevic's hometown, actually beat up some of the Otpor activists on May 2nd, 2000. Actually, he himself showed up late. He wasn't actually involved in the incident itself. The whole beating was organized and conducted by his gang in the city of Požarevac. So to be completely honest and frank, he wasn't involved in the beatings, but it was his gang that did it. So what happened immediately after the incident is that the people who were beaten, there were three Otpor activists that were beaten in this incident. They were immediately arrested by the police, and they were charged with attempted murder that they attempted the murder of the people who actually beat them up. So the first thing that the regime tried to do was to cover up everything. They arrested them. We couldn't actually see what happened. We couldn't get in contact we couldn't get in contact with them, and they also tried to reinterpret what was going on, to say that actually it was the Otpor activists who actually attempted to kill the people who actually beat them up, this gang. So we didn't know what was going on with them and where they took them, or were they in jail or were they in hospital, or for us they were completely missing. So what we tried to do was actually, and you can see the posters that were printed, these were the pictures of the people who were beaten up, and the words say the name of the person and the picture, and it says, this is how he used to look before. We don't know how he looks now, because we just knew that they were beaten badly, but we didn't know how badly that was. So finally, the big victory for us was when these people were actually allowed to see a lawyer, and the lawyer took the first photos of these people, and this is actually how we ended up knowing what was going on. And then, as somebody said, the victim becomes the image of the movement. Let me just try to spend 10 minutes maybe maximum on the assignment, and the instructions are relatively clear, so you can read them later as well. So the idea for the final assignment is actually to collect everything that we were doing so far and to put it in one campaign plan. So goals, targets, potential allies, message, methods of message dissemination, estimates of activists, etc., etc. Everything that we did in 2 pages, not more than 1,000 words. That's maximum. So I don't say that you need to do 2 pages. I just say that I don't think you should be doing more than 2 pages. That would be maximum. So as you remember, we looked at 4 campaign plan elements. First, we looked at the objective and we asked ourselves, what do we want to achieve? The second, we looked at the message. Actually, we asked ourselves, what do we want to say? We looked at tactics, especially online tactics like blogging, making videos, photos, etc. And asked ourselves, what do we want to do? And we also talked about organization resources, actually how we do it. Especially, we made a focus on activists and human resources. But we also spent some time looking at the low-cost alternatives to material resources and to time management. So the first thing, as you recall, is the campaign objective. And the campaign objective is developed using the SMART criteria. SMART stands for: S is for specific, M for measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely objective. And we did it a few weeks ago, so that campaign objective now needs to be part of the campaign plan. So you may want to redo it. The second thing is the message. And we talked about targets of the message using the spectrum of allies. And we also talked about the tailoring the message using the message box. So you may want to look at that again and use that as the message for the campaign plan. Then we talked about tactics and activities and media that can be used both offline and online, but especially online tactics like blogging, videos, Facebook, YouTube, infographics, but also posters and flyers and things that can be used, and how to use them. And we also talked about organization and resources, where we estimated the number of organizers and activists, and we defined positions within the campaign. We also, touched upon the material resources and time. So in the final campaign plan, you may want to put some material resources if any are needed. So let me just spend a few minutes explaining the format of the campaign plan. So the total should be not more than 2 pages, as I said. It should start with a short summary of what the campaign is about. And this is 1 paragraph, including using the 5 W's: who is doing it, why, where, when, and who and what. Yeah. And then it can be followed by a very short background, giving us the reasons and the situation. This is followed by a objective, which we already developed, which is 1 paragraph. Then targets of the messaging campaign and the campaign message as well, which is another 2 or 3 paragraphs, and then followed by another 2 or 3 paragraphs of tactics, activities, media, etc., which is then followed and then which you don't see here is the last paragraph, which has resources and organization, which is the thing that we developed for this particular class. So the total is around 1,000 words. So this is 2 pages, and it contains all that information. Why? Because we have to ask ourselves, who are we writing campaign plans for? We are writing campaign plans for people who are organizers of the campaign, so they can have that campaign plan as a reference for whatever they are doing. We're developing it for the activists, or actually people who are going to be implementing these activities, and they want to know the bigger picture. They want to know when they're writing a blog post, or when they're making a video or something like that. They want to know how this fits into the larger plan. So they want to know what is the grand plan. And we're also writing it for supporters who may be willing to help. even without coordination. They may decide to do something on their own, and they can read the campaign plan and then do something according to that plan. And so this is why this plan needs to contain all the necessary information about the campaign. Its objective, which is SMART objective, its campaign message, and the means of disseminating this message, and especially what are the roles that activists and organizers in the campaign can take. So people need to know what is the goal, what is the objective. They need to know what they are supposed to say and how to say this, and they should know all this in this campaign plan. So we can actually spend quite some time next week focusing on the issues that were not covered in the course so far. Some elements of the campaign development that you may find interesting or you want to know more. And for that we're gonna use the forum and the discussion board, so that all these questions that maybe were left unanswered will be answered in the final class. We will also in the final class take a look at the campaigns that you are gonna create, and then we're gonna actually look at these campaigns and see, if they need some improvement, or if they need to be, how shall I say, changed in a particular way. So the final session, although we're gonna spend some time, I want to tell you the story of the Požarevac incident and the backfire. One of the things that I would like to spend a lot of time there is actually looking at the campaign as a whole, meaning all the elements and how they fit together, etc., etc., etc. Okay, I will go back to the Požarevac incident, and I may explain it even today. But before I do that, are there any questions about this particular about the final assignment? Is there anything that I could answer now that has to do with the campaign and the campaign plan? Okay, so we have a question here. Can we have the next session of this class to help with building volunteers, etc.? Okay, we will. I will, and if there are other questions like this or suggestions, I will include that too. I will try to dedicate some time in the next class on building volunteers. I already gave some in the readings. There are few texts that are actually aimed at building volunteers, but I'm gonna spend some time on that. Okay. We should use our country situation as an assumption. Well, I'm not sure if I understand the question, but in the campaign format, in the campaign plan format, first there is the summary is about the campaign itself, and then the background is what you can say the situation in the country, but mostly through the lens of that particular issue. And it can be a real situation, but you can also, depending on what you want to do, it can be totally unrealistic if you wish. I mean what I'm going to look at is the campaign format, how it looks. I'm not gonna go into whether it is a real or a unreal situation. That is, for the purpose of this class, it doesn't need to be a real situation. Okay, there are no other questions about this. I'm gonna go back to this. incident. And as I said, we were faced with the total uncertainty of what happened to these three people, to our three activists. They just disappeared. And I remember I was sitting in Belgrade at the time. Actually, I was thinking of actually giving up. I didn't want to be part of Otpor anymore. This is actually it's very funny that on May 2nd I decided that there is no way we can bring down Milošević, and that probably I should think about my own future and what should I do with my life. So I was sitting at home contemplating that, actually trying to make a decision to leave the movement, and then my phone rang, and one of the people from Požarevac, from this town, called and said, and told me about the incident. And he said, these people are lying down in the street, totally unconscious, and these people are beating them. The Milošević's gang is beating them. And so we immediately gathered, and we tried to kind of figure out what was going on, and we tried to get in contact with somebody who is there. In the meantime, the police arrested our folks, and they just disappeared. We didn't know if they took them to the hospital or they took them to the prison. But one thing they tried to avoid is to show them in public. So they hid them for a reason, because they were beaten so badly. And we immediately figured that since these people are not around, and you cannot find them, you don't even know where they are, you cannot even know in which hospital they put them, if they put them in hospital, or in which jail they put them. Probably something really bad happened to them, and they're probably beaten so badly. And this is when we made the decision to actually go for this particular poster that you can see below. So there were incidents, and there was repression before that. And repression before this particular incident was even worse, and there were people who were killed and who were assassinated by Milošević's thugs, and there were people who were beaten up badly before. So nothing that happened to these people was, how shall I say, very much more brutal than something that happened to somebody else before. There were much more prominent opposition figures who were either killed or severely beaten or something by the Milošević's regime before that. So the reason why this particular incident actually backfired was because of the effort that we put to turn this particular guy, Radojko Luković, into what we call the face of Serbia. So the campaign was, this is the face of Serbia. And the campaign started as soon as the first lawyer actually managed to reach, which was several weeks later, managed to reach Radojko Luković, that we could know that he's alive and that he could take a picture of him. So this is several weeks later. His wounds weren't that bad anymore. So this was, how shall I say, I just cannot imagine how he looked on that particular day. But nevertheless, you could still see that he was beaten, and this is why we decided to do the campaign. This is the face of Serbia. We didn't manage to get them out of jail. They were still let's say, on trial for attempting to murder people who beat them up, and we didn't actually manage to make any real progress there. So for us, this particular incident didn't look like a victory at the time. We made such a big effort, but we didn't manage to free these guys. We didn't manage to bring the people who did it to trial. Nothing. However, 3 months later, Milosevic called for elections, and then he lost the elections 4 months later, and then he had to step down. And after he stepped down, we actually had an opportunity to see what was going on inside the regime. And we actually, when Milosevic regime fell down, we actually had information on the communication that was taking place at the time of the incident inside the regime, between the local police in the city of Požarevac and Milosevic and the Ministry of the Police and the high government officials and the courts that were sentencing our friends to jail, etc., etc. So what we figured was that actually this particular incident created a huge havoc inside the regime, that there were police officers who were reported ill. They didn't want to come to duty because they didn't want to take part in that. We then realized that actually there were judges who refused to sentence these people, refused to sentence them as murderers, because for them it was obvious that these people were victims. But this was all happening outside of the public eye. We didn't know at the time when we were doing this campaign that it was having such a big effect inside the regime. We only learned that a year later when everything was over. So this is an interesting incident. This is an interesting episode of our struggle against Milosevic, because not many people actually would say that this incident contributed to the fall of Milosevic. But when you read the communication between different elements of the regime, you can see that after this incident, the low-ranking officers of the police, of the army, and the judiciary are not willing anymore to how shall I say, follow any order coming from Milosevic, because they think that this has gone too far. However, they're still afraid to come out in the open and to say publicly that they are opposing this. They're trying to find ways to do it still inside the system, and that's why we didn't notice it at the time. But after everything was over, it turned out that this particular incident was the tipping point for the loyalty shifts that happened inside the regime. And these loyalty shifts actually happened only several months later, and we didn't connect these two. Okay, so any questions on the backfire? I'm reading now what is written in the chat box. One of the biggest problems with repression is that it's dehumanizing, so that people are really afraid of repression, and then they don't want to know about it, and it's actually very difficult for people when they are confronted with repression. It can actually produce some real emotional reactions. It can produce fear, but it can also produce moral outrage. But it is very important that these stories are publicized in a personalized way, so that it's not about statistics. You know, in our case, we had the statistics already, and especially because we had a civil war, and there was a lot of really brutal massacres that took place in that war. You know, we had the Srebrenica massacre, where the Milosevic's troops actually murdered 8,000 boys and men. When we had countless different, let's call them smaller massacres. And so this actually created the situation that people were just looking at that as numbers. And it was important to give the whole story around one particular incident. So that particular incident became, how shall I say, visible at the time. And I know that, you know, that in Iran this has been going on for years. So what I'm trying to say is that, you know, not saying that this is not the way it has been done. I'm just saying that the way to do it is actually to move from the statistics into explaining personal stories and what happened to individual people, because this is more coming back to the second class of this course, telling the story. This is personal stories are actually much better understood by the audience. So if there aren't any questions here.
Hi to everybody. The only question I have from Ivan is that recently I have doubted these Facebook campaigns. Of course they're better than nothing, of course, but I'm thinking that, for example, in Iran right now, Nasrin today is in prison and she's in hunger strike, and there are a lot of Facebook campaigns for her, but what is really happening? Nothing happens. Everything is just in the virtual world. So is it really useful? What do you think, Ivan? Do you think if Facebook is a useful tool for a human rights campaign? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, this is a great question. I think that, you know, as we looked at the organizing and managing earlier, like last week, and managing organizers, Facebook is a great tool for that. It's a great tool to reach out to the people that you can use later to spread the word. However, the problem with many Facebook campaigns is that they limit their activity to that. They limit their activity to Facebook. Instead of using the connections on Facebook and using these people as organizers and activists to spread the message further outside of the internet, especially offline, so that actually they come back to Facebook to get new information and new how to call them, maybe instructions or guidelines what to do. They limit themselves to just to Facebook. So I would just suggest that, you know, I mean, I don't know particular how shall I say, campaign that you may refer to, but this is what generally is happening. So Facebook should be a part of the campaign, and it is an important part because of the connections that are established on Facebook, but it shouldn't be a Facebook campaign, if you see what I mean. It shouldn't be a campaign that is limited just to Facebook. Yes, and there is a comment here. It's useful, but not enough. There must be some practical and offline practices alongside. This is exactly what I was trying to say too. I hope my answer was helpful. But we can talk more about these issues next week, and of course we can continue this discussion on the forum. And this is also where we can actually go much deeper into particular details of each of those, because this is going to make me it's going to be much easier for me to comment on certain things in writing rather than now when I'm pressed with time. So, but next week we're going to talk about the full campaign, and you're going to develop your campaign plans, and we're going to talk about the full campaign, which then will cover where Facebook sits, where blogging goes, what is the message, how it can be disseminated, etc., etc., etc. So for what I wanted to get from this particular class is to show two things. First, that there are unintended consequences and that you should be prepared for them. There are unintended or unplanned events with unintended consequences, and you should be prepared for them. And the second thing is that if you don't, this is the lesson of Požarevac incident, if you don't see the effects of your campaigns or of your efforts, that doesn't mean that these effects are not there. Sometimes they're just not visible to the public, but they're happening under the radar, and things are changing slowly, which then later accelerates, and people think that everything happened quickly in the end. And for instance, in our case, nothing was happening for years, and then finally in a matter of months everything changed. Well, I guess something was happening for years and decades, more than a decade of fighting against Milosevic, although we didn't see any results from that. And this is certainly true for the Požarevac incident, which we later realized had an enormous effect on that. Okay, I will see you on the forum, and I will see you next week, where we're gonna wrap up with this course and we're gonna look at the campaigns. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
اگر بارها دنبال واژه آموزش گشته اید ولی با درهای بسته روبرو شده اید، اگر دنبال آموزشکده‌ای گشته اید که دور نباشد و استادهای خوبی هم داشته باشد، اگر مشتاق آموختن هستید اما توانایی مالی کافی نداشته اید که بیشتر و بیشتر بخوانید و بدانید، اگر شبها وقت آزاد دارید و روزها نمیتوانید دنبال درس و کلاس بروید، توانا بهترین انتخاب شماست. توانا بود هر که دانا بود. توانا رایگان در اختیار شماست. آموزشکده‌ای در خانه شماست. هر وقت که بخواهید، شب یا روز. با درس‌هایی مانند حق و حقوق زنان، دموکراسی، تفسیرهای نوین و لیبرال از دین، حقوق اقلیت‌ها، حکومت قانون، نهادسازی و نهادهای مدنی، محیط زیست، روزنامه نگاری و امنیت فضای مجازی و موبایل‌های هوشمند. آموزشکده توانا کلاس‌های دلخواه شما را رایگان به منزل شما می‌آورد. در کلاس‌های توانا با نام و جیمیل مستعار ثبت نام کنید. برای ما مهم انگیزه شهروندی و علاقه شما به آموختن است. ما هرگز نام واقعی شما را نمی‌پرسیم. تیم فنی توانا از طریق سایت تواناتک به شما کمک می‌کند تا با خیال راحت و فارغ از دردسرهای امنیت وب در کلاس‌ها شرکت کنید. در توانا بیاموزید، با تواناتک پاسخ سوال‌های فنی خود را بگیرید و از صدها کتاب، ویدئو، آدیو و مدرک دیجیتال در کتابخانه توانا رایگان استفاده کنید. توانا پنجره آشنایی شما با جهان ایده‌های نو و تجربه مردم دیگر کشورها در گذار به دموکراسی. برای دسترسی به توانا و اطلاعات بیشتر به فیسبوک، توییتر، یوتیوب و گوگل پلاس توانا و تواناتک بپیوندید.